Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Math 100. We are making good progress through Chapter 5, and today we have reached Section 5.4. We have been studying statistics, and now we go into the more mathematical aspects of statistical studies in these last two sections of Chapter 5. So in this section, which is Section 5.4, we will study what we call average or averages. We have like three different ways to measure that central tendency. And then we'll talk about how to measure the spread, how widespread the data values are. And those are, those are called measures of variance or variation. And so let's get started in section 5.4. The title of section 5.4 is averages and standard deviation. But more generally, when we talk about averages, we are talking about the measures of central tendency. And then standard deviation is one example of a measure of variation. Okay, so those are the things that we will be looking at. Here's the main question or main questions. When you collect a set of quantitative data, remember, those are numerical values. How do you characterize it? And what do you look for? Okay, so as an example, I want you to look at these two different sets of values. All right, so each consists of 5 numbers. And let's say, because we want to have some context in which we can discuss this, let's say there was a 50-point test. There was a 50-point test given in two classes, Class A and Class B. And the results were as follows. A, the 5 students got 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50 points. Okay, so there was this one perfect score. And then B had 5 students as well, but their scores were 20, 25, 30, 35, and 40. All right, which class did better? Well, that's kind of hard to say, right? Well, A had somebody who didn't miss any points, but there was somebody who scored as low as 10 points out of 50. B, the spread is not that much, but nobody scored perfect. In fact, nobody missed less than 10 points and so on. So how would you describe the performance of each class? Are they similar? Okay, what can you observe about these two classes? Let's write some sentences. Both classes had exactly the same average. Did you see that? No, 30. Okay, so if you add up all those numbers in A, that's 10 plus 20 plus 30 plus 40 plus 50. The sum is 150. So if you divide it by 5, you get 30, which is their class average. For B, the sum is also 150. So if you divide it by 5, you get 30. So the average was the same for both classes. But Class A had more variation. Their scores were more spread out or spread apart, right? So that's something that you can tell. And now we are going to quantify these two things. One is about the center and the other is about variation. How would you quantify these? And that is the topic of this section. If you look in a book, there are many other things written in section 5.4. We are just going to focus on the 3 measures of central tendency and maybe 2 of the many measures of spread. Okay, so let's go to the measure or measures of central tendency. What is the average? What do we mean by an average? Okay, well, it depends on the way we use and use the word average. It depends on what is meant by average in this. So when we talk about the average, we talk as if there's just one average. Okay, but there are actually 3 things considered to be a measure called an average. Okay, so the first one is the mean. The mean. Okay, so this is also an adjective that means not very nice, right? But the word mean, noun, means that it is the numerical average, which is what we just calculated, the sum of all values divided by the sample size. So what you do here is you add up all the values and then you divide it by the number of values or the number of numbers you see in the set. Okay, we've done this already here, and we'll have more examples. The second thing we mean by the word average is often it's the median. And the word median has to do with mid, MID, something in the middle. So it is the middle value. Now, middle, well, you say, well, it depends on which order. Sure, and that's why it is very important to know that before you calculate the median or before you identify the median value, it is very important to order and reorder, if necessary, your data values. If your data values are not in the ascending or the descending order, then you would have to order them first before you find what that median is. Now, the middle value is easy if you have like 3 or 5 or 7 or 37 numbers. But if you have 2 or 4 numbers, for instance, there is no middle value, right? So if there is no middle value because you have an even number of values, then you take the 2 middle ones and you take the average, the numerical average, the mean of the 2 middle values, and that becomes your median. All right, we'll do some exercises on this as well. All right, lastly, last but not least, we have the thing called mode. Okay, so what is the mode? This is not as frequently used, but imagine, for instance, you are looking at an item on Amazon.com, and then you see all these reviews, hundreds of reviews, maybe thousands of reviews. People are rating this product 1 to 5, right? And you see lots of 5s, but you see a lot more 4s, for instance, okay? And 4 seems to be the most frequently occurring value for the review. Then you say, oh yeah, most people say 4. And that is the mode. The mode is the most frequently occurring value. Sometimes there is not any because, maybe each value occurs like exactly once, and then there is no mode. Or you can say every value is the mode, thus making the mode meaningless. Okay, the first two are probably the more important ones than the other one, the third one. But you should be familiar with all these 3 M's. Okay, the mean, the median, and the mode. Okay, let's practice. Let's do this example. Find all 3 of these. In other words, find the mean, the median, and the mode of this data set. Okay, let's try that and see if we can come up with this. What is the mean? Let's go ahead and try writing all of these down. Okay. To find the mean, you have to add up all the numbers. Okay, so get your calculator out, or you can use like a spreadsheet and enter like 49, 40, 57, 53, 40, 39, 53, 48, 60, and 53. Add them all up. The sum of, and by the way, how many numbers do we have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Right? Some of these 10 numbers, numbers is, if you do this addition, you get 492. If you do not get 492, try it again. Simply adding them should give you a sum of 492. The mean then is 492 divided by the number of numbers you see in this set, which is 10. So the numerical average, otherwise known as the mean, more specifically, the arithmetic mean is 49.2. Okay. Median. Now, to find the median, you notice here that the numbers are not ordered in ascending or descending order, right? So let's try to rearrange this. What's the smallest number you see here? 39. Okay. And then the next smallest number is 40, which occurs twice, right? And then what's the next smallest number after 40? Okay, you get 48. Oops, 48. And then you see a 49. 53, how many 53s do you have? Looks like you have 53 3 times, and then 57 and 60. And by the way, just to be sure, when I do this, okay, I may have duplicated something. I may have omitted a number. So I always write down what I think is the correct ordering, and then I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so I started with 10 numbers, And I ended up with 10 numbers written in a different order, in this case, the ascending order. So I know I copied this correctly. All right, so now you pick the two middle values. Remember, I have 10 values, so there is no, so right here between 49 and 53 is the halfway mark. Okay, you have 5 numbers below and 5 numbers above. So 49, 53, both of these numbers are the two middle numbers. So the median is 49 plus 53, and then you divide it by 2. And the answer is 51 because the sum of 49 and 53 is 102. Okay, you divide it by 2 to get your 51 as your median. So the mean was 49.2, the median is 51, fairly close, right? The mode is the number that occurs most frequently if you have such a number. And here you see 53 occurred 3 times. So 53 is your solution for the mode, because 40 only occurs twice and all other numbers occurs only once. So the mode is 53, which occurs 3 times. All right, great. So that is what we can do to find the mean, median, and the mode. Now the median is easier if you had an odd number of numbers in this data set. Then you just pick the middle one middle one, not take the 2 middle ones and find the average. All right, sometimes, now you may wonder, why do we have 3 central tendency measures? I mean, why don't we just use the mean? Because that seems to be the easiest one to understand, right? The arithmetic mean or the numerical average. So why bother using anything else? Here is the reason. The reason basically is one word: outlier. This is not some person who tells a lie. That would be just a liar. An outlier is somebody who lies or who is existing sort of outside of the mainstream. An outlier is a data value much higher or much lower, much bigger or much smaller than most other values. So these are extreme values and very rare values. And this outlier or an outliers could completely mess up some of these statistics. Okay, so watch what happens here. Suppose you walk down to Hollywood and Highland, all right, a very busy corner of one of the most entertaining cities in the country, right? You've been there, Hollywood and Highland, and you have the mall there, and lots of people are walking. And you grab some people and you say, hey, how much did you make last year? Suppose you ask 5 people and the first 4 were unemployed last year, but the last one happens to be a movie star, and that person made $5 million. So the answers you get will be 0.0005 million. You have 5 numbers, so it's a data set of 5 values. What am I trying to say here? All right. You know what the average is? The mean in this case is, and look at the sum, it's 0 plus 0 plus 0 plus 0 plus 5 million, which is 5 million. But you divide it by 5, which is $1 million. Okay, that's the numerical average of these 5 people. So you say, well, you know what? Last year wasn't so bad. I talked to some people in Hollywood. The average value, what is that? Not the parameter, but the statistic, right? The average mean turns out to be $1 million per person. Not bad. But you say, wait a minute, but 4 of them did not have any money. One just happens to be a lucky person who made $5 million. Clearly, the $5 million person was an outlier, right? So the fact that you got a $1 million as your statistic, right? But this is not a good estimate of the real value, the real average, right? So I would say, but this does not accurately reflect the data set, right? What is the median? A median is a middle number, so 0.0005 million. This is already in an ascending order. The middle number here is the 3rd one from the top and the 3rd one from the bottom. the median is 0, right? And in fact, if you didn't have the outlier, the median is still 0. If you didn't have this first 0, the median will still be 0. So the median is much less affected, by an outlier. Okay, so in this sense, the median is actually a nice way to measure the central tendency. Okay, and so for instance, when real estate agents talk about the how much the houses are in a community, let's say, how much are the houses in the Santa Clarita Valley, they will probably give you the median price of homes being sold this year. Why median and not the numerical mean or the arithmetic mean, the first average number we talked about? And that's because one outlier could mess up this mean tremendously. Okay, but the median is very, very unaffected by an outlier or a couple of outliers. So the median is a better reflection when you have a lot of different data numbers, including outliers. All right, so that's why we have more than just one more than one measure for the central tendency. Now, speaking of outliers, let me give you this example here. All right, so this really happened, and you can read about this in books. But years ago, this is years ago now, in 1986 to be exact, there was an American Geographic Society who did a study on what college had the highest average first-year salary for geography majors. See, as the American Geographic Society, they want to promote the discipline of geography, which is not a very popular major in many schools, but they were trying to encourage people to major in geography and say, you know what, let's try to figure out what people make in their first year as a geography major graduates. Okay, and so they also did this, by college, and so they found out when they did the study, there's one college, university, which had a very high average first year salary for people who graduated with a major in geography. It was University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. Now that's a good school, okay? So you say, well, that's a great school. I didn't know that they were really good in geography. In fact, their average first year salary for geography majors were by far #1. I mean, way better than everybody else. Well, there was a reason for that. And the reason is actually in 2 words, okay? Michael Jordan. So yeah, it turns out Michael Jordan actually graduated from a university. Very good. He got a degree, 4-year degree from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, a great flagship university from the state of North Carolina. So he did get a degree in geography. He got a job when he graduated, okay? And his employer was called National Basketball Association. That paid him an enormous amount of money. In fact, it was the Chicago Bulls. And so including his money, which completely was an outlier, of course, right? The average first-year salary for graduates majoring in geography for the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill was much, much more than everybody else. Okay, so sometimes an outlier can really distort or mess up figures, and so just be careful. So I should probably elaborate on this. I should say one graduate was named Michael Jordan, and he was an outlier. Oops, I guess I should not have done this, and so that is the reason for that. Okay, I will correct my mistake here. Let's outlier. Okay. Now, for the average home price, household income, etc., which one do you use? We use the median, and the reason for that is already been stated. A few outliers would not affect the median, but the mean would be significantly changed. And that's why. Okay. And mode is hard to use because most times the mode does not exist. All the household price, the home prices could be different, and every price could only occur once. All right, so that is the first half of this section, section 5.4. The next half is going to be the more complicated subsection, and that is the measures of variation. All right, we'll learn 2 measures of variation. We will spend maybe 10 seconds on the first, the rest of the time on the second part, okay? So those will be covered in the second part of this video for section 5.4.